Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Bruce Chesley. I am the strategy leader for Boeing Space and Launch. I'm also the IAF Vice President for Industry Relations. So in both of those capacities, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Industry Day lunch sponsored by Boeing. Please take your seats. We have a special program today with Congresswoman Kendra Horn providing remarks. So what we're going to do is ask you to take your seats now, and we'll begin with the remarks, and then we'll open up the buffet and everybody can get lunch. Okay, before we get to that though, our first speaker today is Jim Chilton, the Boeing Senior Vice President for Space and Launch. Jim started his career with Boeing as a turbo machinery engineer, development engineer at the Rocketdyne division in Canoga Park, California. Since that time, he's continuously worked on every aspect of rocketry, missiles, space systems, satellites, and human exploration systems, leading him now to his position as Senior Vice President of Space and Launch. His current role has him in an oversight function for programs such as the International Space Station, the CST-100, Starliner commercial crew vehicle, NASA's Space Launch System heavy lift vehicle for the Artemis program, as well as government and commercial satellites, and Boeing's participation in the United Launch Alliance. Jim is a longtime supporter of the International Astronautical Federation, most recently having been inducted into its sister organization, the International Academy for Astronautics, on Sunday, and being immediately appointed to the Board of Trustees. With that, please welcome Jim Chilton to the podium.
I have the distinct pleasure today of introducing one of us. Congresswoman Horn from the great state of Oklahoma will be making our remarks at lunch today, and what I'd like to do is kind of point out to everybody that we're very blessed to have her willing to do the job she's earned in her U.S. House seat, and with her background being so able. She chairs I'll start with her background. She's an attorney who has been in private practice and also worked in nonprofits. From the one of us perspective, she spent years at the U.S. Space Foundation, which is the sponsoring organization for our National Space Symposium. And in that role, she had both policy and communication insight into everything from STEM to government advocacy to how the space world is different for profits, nonprofits, governments. So from that perch, in my view, she learned more about the various ways we all participate in the space ecosystem than almost anyone you could name. Now, lucky for us, she won a seat in her home state of Oklahoma, in Oklahoma City, and her roles span, amazingly, science, civil, and military space. So, to give you the details, she actually chairs the Space Subcommittee of the U.S. House Science Committee. She's on the Armed Services Committee, and particularly the Strategic Forces Committee, where you see a lot of the military space work get done. We're fortunate to have a leader like Congressman Horn. I could actually go on and on a little bit, but I think rather than bore you with me talking, I'll ask Congresswoman, would you join us? Please help me welcome her.
I think I may be the only thing standing between you and food, so hopefully we don't have unrest. But I appreciate the opportunity to speak early as we have votes coming up soon, and want to make sure that if I have to go running out the door, we've had a chance to have a conversation. Jim, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and thank you to Boeing for sponsoring this lunch. And to all of the representatives from across the world and all of the different industry partners and organizers that made this IAC possible. It's really an exciting time For us to be here in the U.S. for the first time in 17 years, the first time that the IAC has been held here in the U.S., as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Apollo moon landing. Right now, I think it is of note and important to note that there is so much happening in space, and there's so much happening in so many different arenas right now that we are on the cusp of something new, and we're also at this place where industry has developed so many capabilities that we couldn't even have envisioned when we first began journeying into space less than a century ago. So, while conferences like the IAC are important for getting new information and meeting new vendors, the really key piece is the relationships. And I'm looking back through this event space and see many familiar faces and some new faces. That's one of the great things I think about space, is that it is a community. It is a community of visionaries. It's a community of people who have pushed the boundaries of what is possible. And it's also a community of people and businesses and governments and international partners that continue to do so. So today, I want to talk a little bit about where we are and what that looks like from where I sit, and the challenges and the opportunities for our agencies, whether they're the civil space agencies and NASA and our international partners, as well as our commercial partners, and what that means moving forward, and how this transition enables and empowers our communities. Because we know, and I know everyone in this room knows, that collaboration is increasingly important. It's always been important, but increasingly important as we look to space to solve some of the major challenges that we face as individuals, as communities, as countries, and as the world. Challenges such as addressing the issues of climate change, providing for clean and affordable energy into the future, national security issues, educating our systems, building a skilled workforce of tomorrow, encouraging and growing a diverse STEM-trained field, advancing economic competitiveness, and working together to build a more sustainable future. All of these things can be and are enabled by space and space-related activities. You know, I think I had somebody tell me when I was running for office that I was probably the only candidate that had on their platform a piece of information about space being critical to our infrastructure. I talk about this all the time because we don't do a good job of bringing home the impacts of space in our day-to-day lives, and how all of the things, or many of the things, that we take for granted, from the way we communicate with each other to the way that we travel, to the way that healthcare is delivered in rural areas, are enabled and empowered by space technologies. And that this critical infrastructure also spans weather prediction and on and on and on. I don't have to tell many of you in this room, but while space has the power to inspire and has inspired generations to go into the science and the STEM fields, it also changes our lives, and we have to recognize all of those things. And these and other benefits would not be possible without a significant investment on the front end from our individual and collective governments. I know we have representatives from around the world. Without the government investment before there was a business model to be had. And at the same time, companies, partners in this room that represent companies that have been around since the beginning, saw the potential in working with and partnering with the U.S. and the other nations that saw fit to invest in the exploration of our universe, that thing that always unites us. Really, exploration is one of the core drivers that we as humans have. And today, whole industries and sectors exist because of this initial investment that we couldn't have foreseen. I mean, how many of us would have been able to foresee that we would be walking around with computers more powerful than what took us to the moon, with camera technology that was developed as a result of our space program, with revolutions in the delivery of healthcare because of the research. That's where that cutting edge, that leading edge, that bleeding edge of research and investment and continued investment by our nation's governments and the cooperation is critical. And at the same time, these investments got the inspiration of entrepreneurs and companies that saw the potential to take that forward. We've come a long way in the 50 years since we landed on the moon, in the just over 60 years since NASA was formed and we began this journey. In 12 years, we went from the launch of the first satellite to landing on the moon. And in the decades since, we've demonstrated the ability to support humans living and working in space continuously for nearly 20 years. We've launched robotic probes to study every planet in the solar system, landed and operated spacecraft on Mars, explored the heavens to understand the birth of stars, the formation of planets and galaxies, and the dynamics of our changing universe, just to name a few things. And while we anticipate that our investment and our continued investment and collective investment in space exploration will bring scientific discovery and continued technological innovations, and the capabilities that we have today and the capabilities that we can't even imagine tomorrow are continuing to come online, they're right at our doorstep. That means that we can continue to develop the business services, applications, and change that improve our everyday lives on a day-to-day basis. From commercial satellites and television that we rely on, Earth imaging, weather prediction, and so much more. And in addition to the governments and commercial space actors, we are inspiring the next generation as elementary school students are now able to build CubeSats and send them up and get their hands on and get them involved in tomorrow's technology today to show them that it's not out there, it is right here. And in turn, we've got more and more companies emerging to support this continued evolution. So the days of a wholly government-dominated space industry are over. And yet, we are in this interesting growth period right now. This Sunday, I had the privilege of spending the day with the IAF Members of Parliament meeting, where we had a robust and wide-ranging discussion from topics from space exploration to space traffic management and the importance of space in our day-to-day lives. And acknowledging where we are is on the precipice of a new space age, and that looks different than it did when we were moving from a blank sheet of paper. Because now we have infrastructure, we have knowledge, and that both makes it easier and it makes it more challenging as we move forward. It's clear from that meeting that all of us have to come together, governments, policymakers, companies, universities, and international entities, to grapple with this changing world of space. And the pace of change is speeding and intensifying as the number of nations and commercial actors only continue to grow. The activities that we never could have imagined, I'll say it again, are on our doorstep. And how we proceed and how it impacts our lives here on Earth and our future exploring the cosmos is up to us and a collective conversation. In short, we're transitioning now as an industry from a learning curve into a growth curve. This is exciting and it's messy. We've got some entrepreneurs in the room and some people who were once entrepreneurs that are more established, and government entities and regulators. And this is exciting and it's messy, and it requires us to all come to the table. On Sunday, Dr. Sandy Magnus talked about the fact that we are right now operating simultaneously in 3 different stages of space. In the initial stage, where the government investment is still critical, pushing that edge where there's not yet an industry there. We're also in the development stage where industries are emerging and evolving, and we're in this combination. And we're also in a normalization phase where we have so many space and space-enabled technologies that impact our lives that there are billions of dollars worth of business and industry that are taking place every single day. And where these transitions exist, where they exist, and how we move them forward is a conversation that will and must continue, because it's not clear. And there are also legal questions that we have to answer about the use of space resources and ongoing operations in space and on celestial bodies. And then there is the all-important and ever-present conversation about risk. Risk is something that is always there. It's something that we have to look at with a new view in each of these different stages. Talking about risks are more complex as the space domain gets more crowded, as we're talking about risk of debris and space traffic management, but also risk to our assets and our lives here on the Earth, as well as risks to the sustainability of space and how we balance those. And then the question of what is the role of the government and what are the responsibilities of commercial entities and how we balance that. These are just a few of the important issues that we're going to have to navigate as we move through this changing space domain. So what's next? Well, the bottom line is that the value of space to our economy around the world and to inspiring youth and to continuing to develop jobs and opportunities for the next generation and to develop discoveries, scientific discoveries, and other opportunities is vast. But as more people come online, nations, companies, and activities, we have to address critical issues. Chief among them, one of the important issues that we have to address collectively is space traffic management. I don't have to tell anybody in this room about the dangers of space debris. I don't have to tell anybody in this room about the need to communicate about where our space assets are, because the consequences of not doing that are only going to increase in their severity. And we know that the debris that's out there doesn't magically disappear and just move off, and we don't have to worry about it. So we have to talk about how we're going to address this. This is going to require an international effort, and I believe that it is urgent and imperative that we continue these conversations and that we develop the necessary systems, not only for space situational awareness and space traffic management, but also for debris removal and creating more space in space for us to function. Doing so will require us to look at what types of international agreements and frameworks that we have and that we need to have. And we also need to consider liabilities and risks and where and how to assign those. It will also require a regulatory framework that incentivizes creating a pathway that commercial operators and commercial operations in space in this domain and in others can continue to follow without impeding growth, while ensuring that we set the appropriate guardrails. Because the guardrails, when they're not unduly burdensome, help us to understand how we can each operate and respect each other's territory, from businesses and industry to government and international actors. Guardrails are important for us to know the rules of the road, because if you're going to build something that's going into space, you got to make sure that it's protected. And then we also have to know that the implications of what's happening in space and what's happening here on Earth we understand what those are, and that we're all operating from the same page of singing from the same songbook. I'll use that analogy. So what does that mean from a policymaker and from my standpoint? I think that's why the dialogue here is so important, because in order for us to create that framework, it's important for us to be having these conversations with you as industry, as policymakers in other countries, as heads of agencies and representatives of governments. And that's why that the Space and Aeronautics Subcommittee, the subcommittee that I chair, is really taking the time right now to closely examine our space programs and plans as we set forward to reauthorize and set space policy. Because certainty is critical for our commercial partners in this, to know what the pathway is so we can reassess as we go down the road. When we hit roadblocks, we know what's expected and what's unexpected and how to navigate that, but also how to set ourselves up for success so we can authorize and appropriate sufficient funding for all of these programs. We have to be on the same page. And it's important for us to set a sustainable, responsible course for all of our activities in space, while balancing the complexity of government, commercial, and international, legal, and geopolitical interest in doing so. The good news is that our future in space is full of possibility and opportunity and discovery. It also poses complex challenges that affect us here on Earth on a day-to-day basis. Starting with the Outer Space Treaty, space and the space industry, we created a framework, the international community, and I think that's important here, the international community. All of the ways that we have and continue to work together, even when there are challenging situations around the globe, created a framework that set forth the peaceful uses of outer space and opportunities so we could all collectively benefit from exploration, discovery, and the utilization of space. And it will take us all moving forward through this next level of space to work together. The engineers, the scientists, the policymakers, the communicators, the lawyers, all of us, to help address these complex issues that we face and to realize the best of what's possible when we invest in space and how it informs our exploration and supports our lives here on Earth. Going back to those issues, I'll say it again, space traffic management, policies, and certainty, and continuing to develop international relationships and clear understandings to support each other, to enable the commercial industry to continue to support government investments and to build whole new industries that we don't even know are going to exist in just a handful of years. And it will take all of us to communicate. And I really, as I come to a close, want to emphasize this, to communicate the importance of space to our daily lives. The inspiration of exploration can't be understated. I got to stand on the mall not too far from here this summer and watch people look at the Washington Monument with the Saturn V rocket displayed and watch young kids get excited, watch people who remember the landing on the moon reminisce. And at the same time, those same people often ask the questions, why do we invest in space? Why is it important? We have problems here on the Earth. We have challenges that need to be solved. We have challenges with education and healthcare and jobs and the economy and conflict around the world. It is this investment and this vision and the willingness to step out that has created solutions to some of those most challenging problems in all of those arenas. It's going to open the doors to a better life down the road, but we have to be smart about the way we do it. And we have to all come to the table to build an environment on the ground and in space that allows continued success and growth. And as we communicate that, as we teach people to appreciate the value of space and space-enabled technologies in our day-to-day lives, we will gain even greater support and understanding to go forward, to push the goals, to explore, to discover, and to utilize space. And the IAC is really a fantastic forum for doing that. So I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity to be here today, for the opportunity to talk about these important issues, to look forward and see what's possible, to envision a world that's better, enabled by space and technology, and many of you here in this room, and look forward to continuing the dialogue and conversations. Thank you for allowing me to be here with you for the time, and I look forward to seeing many of you again soon. And here's to exploring what's next and to the next great thing in space. Thank you. And I'm afraid I'm getting the look that I have to run, which means votes have probably been called. I'm sad to not be able to stay, but thank you again.